Good afternoon. Welcome to today's consulting party virtual meeting. At this time, if you have not done so, we ask that you please enter your name and your affiliation or organization in the chat. And please note that today's meeting is being recorded. Before we begin, I want to cover a few administrative items. This slide shows how attendees can set up closed captioning in Zoom. If you would like to turn on closed captioning and you're using the mobile Zoom app, click on the Captions button. If you are using Zoom on a laptop or a computer, click on the Show Captions button, and you can find this at the bottom of your screen. And then as presenters speak, words will continue to scroll across the bottom of your screen, and you can turn this function off by clicking the Hide Captions button in the same area of your screen. Before we discuss the project at Arlington National Cemetery, I also want to set out some ground rules and etiquette for this morning. First of all attendees should keep their microphones and cameras off until they are called on to speak. Once called, you will have the ability to unmute your microphone and turn on your camera. At that time, each person will have the same allotted amount of time to speak. Only one individual per consulting party will be allowed to provide oral comments during this meeting. All others will be in listen-only mode. If a party has no comment on a topic, please pass when you are called on. Please be courteous and respectful of others' opinions and statements. All voices are equally valued. Please respect the personal truth of others. Set aside judgments and assumptions. This meeting aims to receive input from a diverse group of interested parties, each with their own valuable perspective. I would like to stress that if anyone makes rude or inappropriate comments, they will be warned through the chat box and may be removed from the Zoom meeting and will not be allowed to re-enter if the actions continue. The audio and visual portions of this meeting are being recorded, and a transcript is being written to help with the writing of the environmental analysis. If you do not wish to be a part of the public record of this meeting, please do not make any comments, written or verbal, during the meeting. Lastly, should you have any issues hearing or seeing the presentations, entering questions into the chat box, or for any other technical issues with Zoom, please type your issues into the chat box. Those on the phone should try one of the other numbers in your Zoom email confirmation if you have difficulties. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to introduce myself and the other presenters. I am Colonel Weicker, the Army National Military Cemeteries Director of Engineering. Our compliance lead for the NHPA Section 106 efforts is Ms. Caitlin Smith, the ANMC Cultural Resources Program Manager. Our meeting moderator for the comment periods will be Ms. Erica. If you have not done so yet, I invite you to visit the project website and comment form. The website is shown on this slide. It's https://www.arlingtoncemetery.mil//Confederate-memorial-removal/section-106. The project website hosts all information gathered to date, including the project scope, all consultation with the Virginia State Historic Preservation Office, the Confederate Memorial Phase 2 survey report, and info sheets, among many other pieces of information. There is also a project email that has been included here, and the email is anc-commemorative-works@army.mil. Although we will accept comments received through the email address, I encourage you to access the comment form that will once again be accessible from the project website starting on October 17th. Our agenda is shown on this slide. First, we will have introductions and a roll call of attendees. Then we will lay out for you the role of our consulting parties and what the expectations are for your participation. Next, we will briefly describe where we are in the NEPA process and the Section 106 process. We will discuss the revised area of potential effects and the ANMC's assessment of effects. We will then call on all attending consulting parties and invite them to provide a comment on the assessment of effects. Following these comments, we will then discuss possible mitigation measures to resolve potential adverse effects. We will call on all attending consultation parties to provide comments or suggestions for potential mitigation measures to resolve adverse effects. Once we have gone around the entire room to listen to everyone's comments, we will go around the room a second time and each spokesperson will be called on again. Today, we are seeking comments from consulting parties on the assessment of effects to historic properties and potential mitigation measures to resolve the adverse effects resulting from the removal, disassembly, and storage of the bronze element of the memorial. Comments against removal have been captured during both the public scoping and the first consulting party meeting. So please focus your comments on the assessment of effects to historic properties and mitigation to resolve the adverse effects. Future disposition and reassembly will be discussed at a later date as part of a supplemental MOA. If you begin to provide comments regarding the future reassembly or disposition in your verbal response here, we will ask you to hold your comment and provide it as a written response or provide it at a future consulting parties meeting on these specific topics. Following the comment period, we will go over what to expect in the next steps for the Section 106 planning process. Those not able to attend today's meeting, but who still wanted to have their comments read, were requested to provide written comments ahead of this meeting. All comments will be included in full as an attachment to the meeting minutes. I am now going to turn it over to Ms. Caitlin Smith, our Cultural Resources Program Manager.
Thank you, Colonel. At this time, we will call on individuals
Caitlin, we're experiencing a little bit of a lag in your voice. So I'd just like to do a little sound check with you if possible, just to make sure everyone can hear you properly. Sound check to you, Caitlin. Go ahead and let's see.
We ask those who are on the phone to identify themselves and provide your
No, so we're getting some strange
title and organization.
We cannot hear her. The Paul Ezekiel and Ezekiel family cannot hear her.
All right, thank you. Yes,
sound check.
We're going to work this issue out. We're seem to having a mic issue with Caitlin, so please just stand by, and we'll work that out. I will come off of mute and bring my video forward. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. As Colonel Weicker said, my name is Erica, and I'm going to be supporting the ANMC team today, some of the process. So hopefully you all can hear me okay. I'm just going to check in with our Zoom host. Zoom host, are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, you are loud and clear.
Okay, fantastic. All right, we'll try one more attempt with Caitlin, and if not, either Colonel Weicker or myself will run through the list of consulting parties so that we can keep the meeting on time and on schedule. I know there's a lot of ground to cover today. So just bear with us for a moment, everyone, while we make sure that Caitlin has an audio that you all can hear properly, and then we will take it from there. So bear with.
So do you want me to try it again? Apologies, I'm going to try again. Can the team hear me?
You sounded good initially, Caitlin, but it's breaking up again now.
Breaking up again. Uh,
Again, this is Erica. Thank you very much for your patience as we work through a technical issue to make sure that we have everyone, all presenters with a clear mic and clear audio. So we're just doing an actual station adjustment, a change to the location where Caitlin is. So I really do appreciate your patience. Caitlin is a key member of the team and of course going to lead us through the content portions of this meeting. So it's important for her to make sure that she is set up properly and able to participate fully and lead us through the rest of this meeting. So she's taking this moment right now to get herself organized and set up. And once again, I really do appreciate your patience, and she will be able to join us in just a few moments. Thank you very much. Stand by. Once again, for those of you who've joined, we do appreciate you keeping yourselves on mute and also having your cameras off. There will be opportunities, as Colonel Weicker described earlier, for each consulting party to provide comments on the topics for today's meeting. So prior to that, as Colonel Weicker described in the agenda overview, there will be some description by Caitlin of the material that will be discussed during today's meeting. So she is just getting herself keyed back up and prepared to provide that information. So once again, please stand by.
Apologies. Quick sound check. I'm getting the thumbs up that I am clearer. Apologies for the technical difficulties. All right. So on these next 3 slides, we have a listing of organizations and affiliations along with their spokesperson represented during these consulting parties meeting. This list is largely arranged alphabetically. I will call on your organization and the spokesperson's name. Please unmute yourself and provide your name, title, and consulting party affiliation or organization. First, we have the Arkansas State Historic Preservation Office, Scott Kaufman.
Yes, I'm the State Historic Preservation Officer for Arkansas, and I'm the director of the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program. We're a state agency.
Thank you. Next, the Arlington Historical Society, Mark Benbow. I'll try again. The Arlington Historical Society. If you're having technical difficulties, please enter, if you can, into the chat. I'll have the team check if the Historical Society is indeed present. I'm going to move on. The American Historical Association.
Sarah Weichsel, Director of Research and Publications at the American Historical Association.
Thank you. The American Institute for Conservation.
Hi, this is Caitlin Lee, Outreach Manager for the American Institute for Conservation.
Thank you. The American Battlefield Trust.
Jim Campy, Chief Policy and Communications Officer for the American Battlefield Trust.
Thank you. The Advisory Council on Arlington National Cemetery. Move on. The Mr. Ernest Blevins.
Ernest Blevins, Historic Preservation Architectural Historian, also a member of SCV and SUVCW.
Thank you. Charleston Athenaeum Press. Gene Kaiser Jr.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Gene Kaiser, historian, publisher, spokesman for Charleston Athenaeum Press.
Thank you. Commission of Fine Arts. Is a member of the CFA present? I'm going to move on. Defend Arlington.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, I can hear you, Carlton.
Sorry, I thought you guys could hear me. I apologize. Carlton Hart, Senior Urban Planner with the Commission of Fine Arts. Thank you.
Thank you. Defend Arlington.
Karen Bennett, outside counsel to Defend Arlington.
Thank you. Florida State Historic Preservation Officer. Alyssa Lotane. Hearing nothing, I'm going to move on. Fort Brooke Commissioner. Again, if you're having technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat. Fort Brooke Commissioner. I'm going to move on. The Guardians of American History. Guardians of American History, Barney Bishop. Moving on, the Heritage Protection of North Alabama.
This is Ed Kennedy. I'm the Public Affairs Officer for Heritage Protection North Alabama. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Jewish War Veterans of the USA.
Excuse me, just real quick, Lieutenant Colonel John Coffindaffer, HPNA, also as Chief of Operations, along with Ed Kennedy.
Thank you. Jewish War Veterans of the USA. Ken Greenberg. Moving on, Miss Judith Ezekiel, relative of Moses Ezekiel.
Yes, I represent a group of 42 relatives of Moses Ezekiel who signed 2 petitions in 2 different circumstances, including one concerning the Confederate monument in Arlington, to have it removed.
Thank you. The Kentucky State Historic Preservation Officer.
Hi, my name is not Craig, as you can tell. Gabrielle Fernandez on behalf of Craig Potts. I am a historic preservation coordinator at the Kentucky SHPO.
Thank you. The Louisiana State Historic Preservation Officer.
Hi, this is Jenny Garcia from Louisiana SHPO office. Nicole Hobson Morris is on another call, another 106 call we have.
Thank you. The Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. Clark Mercer. Moving on, the Missouri State Historic Preservation Officer.
Yes, this is Jeffrey Albee. I'm the Review and Compliance Section Chief at the Missouri SHPO.
Thank you. The National Capital Planning Commission.
Hi, this is Lee Webb. I'm the Federal Preservation Officer and an urban planner with the National Capital Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. The National Park Service, George Washington Memorial Parkway. Megan Bailey. Moving on. National Trust for Historic Preservation.
Good afternoon. Robert Neweg, our primary representative, is unable to participate in the call this afternoon. So I'm Betsy Merritt, Deputy General Counsel at the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and I'm the only representative for the National Trust on today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. The New Jersey Flaggers. Vincent Balducci. Moving on, the Organization of American Historians.
Hi, I'm Beth English. I'm Executive Director at Organization of American Historians.
Thank you. Mr. Paul Ezekiel, relative of Moses Ezekiel. Hearing nothing. Preservation Virginia.
Yes, Elizabeth Castelny. I'm the CEO for Preservation Virginia.
Thank you. Save Southern Heritage.
Yes, this is Paul Ezekiel, representing the Ezekiel family. Also, 40 members of the Ezekiel family opposed to the removal of the statue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This could just be me. Your name didn't pop up. Are you on a phone, or are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm
So
on the phone.
might you be one of the? I've got two phone numbers I need to identify. One ending in 0906 and one ending in 1941. Are you perhaps one of those?
Yes, 1941.
1941. Excellent. So our team should be able to update your how you appear in the meeting for others. So we'll be able to more easily
you.
identify you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I'm sorry, I got a little out of sorts there. So let's see, we just ended with, my apologies. So I think we did Preservation Virginia. My apologies if I'm repeating myself. We did Preservation Virginia, yes?
Yes, you did
Thank
Preservation.
you. And then Save Southern Heritage.
Yeah, this is James Shillinglaw, United States Navy retired.
the Save Southern Heritage.
Thank you. Save Their Honor.
This is David Dilley, Director with Save Their Honor.
Thank you. Society for the Preservation of Jewish Civil War History.
Lunel Siegel, I'm a volunteer with the society.
Thank you. Sons of Confederate Veterans, the national
Hello,
representative.
this is H. Edward Phillips. I'm the National Public Affairs Officer for the Sons of Confederate Veterans on the national level. Also with me is Colt Purrier. Mr. Purrier is going to be taking over because I have a conflict in my schedule, but I will stay on as long as I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Sons of Confederate Veterans, the Buffalo Soldiers, or no, I think that's mislabeled. I do not believe they are SCV. My apologies. The Buffalo Soldiers, Florida.
This is Dr. Timothy Campaign. I'm the commanding officer and secretary for Buffalo Soldiers, Florida Incorporated.
Thank you. So SCV, Friends of Judah P. Benjamin, Camp 2210. David McAllister. Moving on, SCV Maryland Division. I believe the representative is in the meeting. If you're having technical difficulties, please let us know. I do see your raised hand. You should be able to come off mute. Go ahead. Terry Klima.
I'm a Maryland Division Commander.
Thank you. SCV Virginia Division.
Robert Floyd, SCV Virginia Division, Deputy Heritage Director.
Thank you. The Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War. Brian Pearson. Moving on, Southern Legal Resource Center.
Yes, this is Kirk D. Lyons, Southern Legal Resource Center Director.
Thank you. The South Carolina State Historic Preservation Officer.
This is John Sylvest. I'm the Supervisor of Survey and Review and Compliance.
Thank you. The Virginia Council.
Anne McLean, Art and Architectural Historian for the Virginia Council.
Thank you. The Texas State Historic Preservation Officer.
Hello, this is Justin Cockritz. I'm a lead project reviewer at the Texas Historical Commission, the Texas SHPO. Also with me is Stephen Cure, our Military Sites Program Coordinator.
Thank you. United Daughters of the Confederacy.
Hi, I'm Jenny Wadowski. I'm the president of the United Daughters of the Confederacy.
Thank you. U.S. Army Center for Military History. Charles Bowery. Moving on. Veterans Defending Arlington.
Lieutenant Colonel John Coffindaffer, Veterans Defending Arlington, Chief Operations. Thanks.
Thank you. The Virginia Military Institute. Colonel Keith Gibson.
Keith Gibson, Preservation Officer, Virginia Military Institute.
Thank you. The Virginia Department of Historic Resources, which is our state's historic preservation office.
Good afternoon. This is Project Function.
We are getting a bit of echo and feedback. Oh, that's better. Is this Mr. Kirchen?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's a little better. So it looks like you are the 3920 number.
No.
Oh, no, sorry. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Somebody else must have been speaking. There you are. Okay, thank you. And then we have the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation.
Hi, yes, this is Chris Keppel, Assistant Director of the Federal Property Management Section with the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you all for introducing yourselves and your organizations. Oh, my apologies. I think we just identified that one. Sorry, my apologies. I did perhaps move 1 second too fast. I do need to make sure I've identified all phone numbers so that we can properly make sure everyone's accounted for in the records. So I think we already identified the 1941 number. I think I've got 2 others that need to be identified. Would the individual whose number ends in 0906 please come off mute and identify themselves? I see in the chat that is Reed Clark from American Battlefield Trust. Thank you for self-identifying. And then I've got a note to identify number ending in 3920. Would the individual with the number ending in 3920 please come off mute and identify themselves?
*6 for the person, in case you forgot. Thank you.
Thank you for the assistance. Again, it's the number ending in 3920. We do want to identify all parties in the meeting since this is intended to be a consulting parties meeting. We may put unidentified individuals back in the waiting room. It looks like, okay, I no longer see them. So I believe we are all accounted for, which is great. Very important to know who we're speaking with. So thank you all again. All right, so let's get on to the subject at hand. All right, so ANMC does appreciate everyone taking time today to join us for this consulting parties meeting. You've been invited to this meeting as potential consulting parties, so ANMC can consult with those individuals and organizations that have a stake in the process and outcome of the Confederate memorial removal. We are soliciting thoughts, ideas, and suggestions to properly analyze and move through each step of the Section 106 process. The goal for today's meeting is to obtain additional comments regarding ANMC's assessment of effects and to discuss potential mitigations for the development of an agreement document, such as a programmatic agreement. As most of you know, the proposed project is for the removal of a monument that commemorates the Confederate States of America from Arlington National Cemetery. As required by Congress and implemented by the Secretary of Defense, Arlington National Cemetery has been directed to implement the recommendations of the Commission on the naming of items of the DoD that commemorate the Confederate States of America or any person who served voluntarily with the Confederate States of America, also known as the Naming Commission. This undertaking is mandated by Congress, and ANMC must remove the bronze elements of the memorial by January 1, 2024. The granite base and foundation will remain in place to minimize the risk of inadvertent disturbance to graves. If you wish to know more about the specific details of the memorial itself, please visit our website, which is again listed on this slide. ANMC is currently executing a coordinated NEPA and NHPA compliance effort to ensure our federal agency meets the requirements of all applicable laws, policies, and regulations. ANMC is analyzing the environmental impacts that could result from implementing the proposed action or any reasonable alternatives. ANMC is preparing an environmental analysis for the project. In this case, the impacts are related to the decision to remove the bronze elements, the disassembly of the bronze elements from the stone base, and the storage of the bronze elements. We are soliciting comments and discussion from the consulting parties with regards to potential impacts to historic properties on the removal, disassembly, and storage. These discussions will feed into the preparation of the environmental analysis, as well as any potential mitigations under Section 106. In the Section 106 process, ANMC is currently in the assessment of effects stage. We have consulted with Virginia Department of Historic Resources, referred to also as the VDHR, throughout each step of the Section 106 process. This includes the initiation of the Section 106 process, where ANMC identified that there was a federal undertaking. Next, we identified historic properties that would potentially be affected, identified properties that may be National Register eligible, and we have now provided VDHR with an assessment of effects to those properties. On October 3rd, ANMC submitted the revised area of potential effects, the APE, and the agency's assessment of effects to VDHR and the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. As part of this meeting, we would like to provide you our revised area of potential effects, our recently completed assessment of effects, and begin discussions with regards to potential mitigations towards a resolution of adverse effects. Please focus your comments on the assessment of effects to historic properties and mitigation to resolve the adverse effects resulting from removal, disassembly, and storage of the bronze elements. Future disposition and reassembly will be discussed at a later date as part of a supplemental MOA and as part of the environmental analysis. If you begin to provide comments regarding the future reassembly or disposition in your verbal response here, we will ask you to hold your comment and provide it as a written response or provide it at a future consulting parties meeting on those specific topics. ANMC provided info sheets to the consulting parties ahead of this meeting to assist in your understanding of this process and terminology. We recommend you utilize these info sheets throughout the meeting. Throughout the entire Section 106 process, the federal agency must consider public views and concerns about historic preservation issues. For more information on this project or to provide a written comment, please visit the ANC website. The results of our Section 106 process are also an important component of the environmental analysis. The process will feed information on impacts to cultural resources into the environmental analysis. And that is why ANMC is working these two compliance procedures in conjunction with one another. We've updated our area of potential effect, the APE, based on comments received from the public. The revised APE is expanded to include the entirety of the Arlington National Cemetery Historic District, including the Memorial Avenue corridor and the Arlington Memorial Bridge. The proposed project directly affects the Arlington National Cemetery Historic District by removing portions of a contributing resource to our NRHP listed historic district, which is also an individually eligible resource. The removal would change the use and design of an entire section of the cemetery, Section 16. The APE does not expand any further out from the ANC Historic District boundaries and what was our original viewshed APE. The DHR guidelines for defining the area of potential effects recommend considering the scale of construction in relation to the surrounding setting. The revised APE considers the scale of the removal, its impacts to the surrounding historic districts, long-term visual effects, and short-term construction-related effects. A&MC has determined that other areas of Virginia outside of the proposed APE, plus the Washington Monument Corridor, the entire United States, or any portions of our international community should not be included because the undertaking does not cause direct effects in these areas, nor does the undertaking have the potential to change land use or other public use characteristics outside of the A&C Historic District. All historic properties within and adjacent to the APE that may be affected by the undertaking include the Arlington National Cemetery Historic District, the Arlington House Historic District, the Fort Myer Historic District, and the Confederate Memorial. In addition, there are historic structures and features that contribute to these historic districts, which are located within or adjacent to the APE. The APE, shown on the previous slide, includes these contributing features and structures within the viewshed of the proposed undertaking. There are no known archaeological resources within the APE. To view the complete Section 106 submission to DHR and our architectural survey report, and to provide your written comments, please visit our website, which is again listed at the bottom of this slide. Now that potentially affected historic properties have been identified, the agency must determine if any of the effects are adverse. An adverse effect is found when an undertaking may alter, directly or indirectly, any of the characteristics of a historic property that qualify it for inclusion in the National Register in a manner that would diminish the integrity of the property's location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, or association. Under NHPA, adverse effects include physical destruction or damage to all or part of the property, alterations inconsistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, relocation or removal, neglect and deterioration. I would ask if others could please mute. Thank you. Neglect and deterioration, change in the character of the property's use or setting, introduction of incompatible visual, atmospheric, or audible elements, transfer, lease, or sale of a property, etc. A&MC provided info sheets to the consulting parties ahead of this meeting to assist in your understanding of this process and terminology. Again, we recommend you utilize these info sheets throughout this meeting. A&MC has determined that the proposed removal and storage of the Confederate Memorial will cause adverse effects on the characteristics that qualify the Confederate Memorial and the Arlington National Cemetery Historic District for individual listing in the National Register of Historic Places. The proposed undertaking would remove a component of A&C's cultural landscape, altering the site's specific history and symbolism within the A&C Historic District. Removal of the memorial's bronze elements from its historic location would change the character of the memorial, leaving little of the memorial within the original landscape setting that contributes to its historic significance. The A&C Historic District would lose a symbolic visual illustration of this history. With regards to the other historic properties within or adjacent to the APE, the Fort Myer Historic District and the Arlington House Historic District should not be adversely affected by the undertaking. There are no adverse effects to historic views or vistas to these districts. No adverse effects to the integrity of either historic district that would diminish their historical and architectural significance. Their character and use would not be impacted, and therefore it's A&MC's determination that there would not be adverse effects to the Arlington House Historic District or the Fort Myer Historic District. Today, we are seeking comments from consulting parties on the assessment of effects to historic properties. Do the consulting parties believe there are effects to historic properties that have been previously identified in addition to the Confederate Memorial and the Arlington National Cemetery Historic District? At this time, again, we are only seeking comments on effects related to removal, disassembly, and storage of the bronze elements of the memorial. Future disposition and reassembly will be discussed at a later date as part of the environmental analysis. These effects related to the Confederate Memorial, the Arlington National Cemetery, these can be effects related to the Confederate Memorial, the Arlington National Cemetery Historic District, or other historic properties. If you begin to provide comments regarding the future of reassembly or disposition in your response, we'll ask you to hold your comment and provide it as a written response or provide it at a future consulting parties meeting on these specific topics. At this time, we ask for your comments on the assessment of effects. Supporting A&MC. If you can please, I'm getting an echo. Thank you. At this time, we ask for your comments on the assessment of effects. Supporting A&MC with obtaining your input today is one of our contractors. Erica will navigate us through the process for obtaining your input on the assessment of effects and potential mitigation measures. Erica?
Thank you, Caitlin. We will be calling on each consulting party representative, similar to the roll call at the start of this meeting. Please follow the process shown on the slide. All attendees should keep their microphone and camera off until they are called on to speak. All parties will have the same amount of time to speak, and each speaker will have 1 minute for their response. Then we will need to move on to the next consulting party. When your name is called, you will come off of mute and turn on your camera. You will then state your full name and organization or say pass. Once you have finished your response or your 1 minute has ended and expired, you will be placed back on mute. You can also choose to write your response in the chat box rather than providing an oral comment. Please be courteous and respectful of others' opinions and statements. All voices are equally valued. Please respect the personal truths of others. Set aside judgments and assumptions. This meeting aims to receive input from a diverse group of interested parties, each with their own valuable perspective. We're going to ask each of you to please provide a response to the ANMC's assessment of effects, such as you concur or do not concur. If you do not concur, please explain. If you do not wish to speak, please respond with pass either verbally or type the word pass in the chat box when you are called upon. At this time, I will begin the roll call and open the floor for comments one at a time. Arkansas State Historic Preservation Office, Scott Kaufman.
Hi, Scott Kaufman here. I'm going to pass.
Great, thank you very much. Arlington Historical Society, Mark Benbow.
Concur.
Thank you. American Historical Association, Sarah Weichsel.
Concur.
Thank you. American Institute for Conservation, AIC, Caitlin Lee.
Concur.
Just to confirm, you said concur, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. American Battlefield Trust, Jim Campy.
Pass at this time.
Thank you. Advisory Council on Arlington National Cemetery, Thomas Chet Edwards. And once again, you are on mute. You'll need to unmute if you are speaking. And let me check the chat box here. I will call the name once more. Advisory Council on Arlington National Cemetery, Thomas Chet Edwards. Okay, moving along, Buffalo Soldiers, Florida, Timothy Campaign.
I'll pass at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Ernest Blevins.
Direct, excuse me, direct adverse effect in Confederate monument, indirect effect and direct effect on Arlington National Cemetery.
Thank you very much. Charleston Athenaeum Press, Gene Kaiser Jr. Athenaeum, sorry, my mistake.
Well, I believe that destroying or demolishing the Confederate Memorial will desecrate Arlington National Cemetery itself.
Thank you for your comment. Commission of Fine Arts, CFA, Carlton Hart.
Pass.
Thank you. Defend Arlington, Karen Bennett.
You. First off, I would say that it's wholly inappropriate for the Army to initiate step 3, the discussion on the assessment of facts, when we're not in agreement that the APE, the scope of the APE is correct. And we're certainly not in agreement that the Army has conducted a reasonable, good faith investigation required by law of information that we provided in our comments in regard to a time capsule and important historic resources located at the memorial site. We'd like to ask the Army how you have considered the information we and over 8,000 of other commenters provided. We don't see our comments, any evidence that our comments have been considered. We're asking again on this call that you would make public comments and comments received to date available. Why are you not being transparent? What are you hiding? Why can't we all see what all the other commenters have said? Your Appendix A, Attachment A, suggests only 34 of the thousands of comments were regarding the APE.
Ms. Bennett, your time has ended. Thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you.
Miss Judith Ezekiel, relative of Moses Ezekiel.
I'll pass on this vote at this time.
Thank you. Florida SHPO, Alyssa Latan. And just a reminder again, you may be on mute. Please make sure to unmute yourself. Once again, Florida SHPO, State Historic Preservation Officer, Alyssa Latan. All right, moving forward, Fort Brooke Commissioner, Carlo Spicola. Again, Fort Brooke Commissioner, Carlo Spicola. Okay. Guardians of American History, Barney Bishop. Guardians of American History, Barney Bishop. All right. Heritage Protection of North Alabama, Edwin Kennedy.
Yes, this is Lieutenant Colonel Ed Kennedy. We non-concur. There's not enough information we've been provided. I feel like this is a check the block exercise. 29 years in the Army, I can tell you this looks like we're just going through the motions. We don't agree. We want more information. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Jewish War Veterans of the USA, Ken Greenberg. Again, Jewish War Veterans of the USA, Ken Greenberg. Okay. Kentucky SHPO, Craig Potts.
On behalf of Craig, we'll pass.
Thank you. Louisiana State Historic Preservation Officer, I'll use that rather than the acronym, Nicole Hobson Morris.
This is on behalf of Nicole, pass.
Thank you. My goodness, I can't even speak today. Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, Clark Mercer. My apologies. Again, Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, Clark Mercer. Right. Missouri State Historic Preservation Officer, Jeffrey Alvey.
Pass.
Pass. Okay, thank you. National Capital Planning Commission, NCPC, Lee Webb.
Pass, please.
Thank you. National Park Service, George Washington Memorial Parkway, Megan Bailey. Again, that's National Park Service, George Washington Memorial Parkway, Megan Bailey. Okay. National Trust for Historic Preservation, Robert Nywig.
This is Betsy Merritt on behalf of Rob Newig for the National Trust. We agree with the adverse effects that have been acknowledged, but we have a couple of additional comments about the wording of the document that was circulated and also additional adverse effects. For example, since the memorial is visible from the Fort Myer Historic District, we believe that a potential adverse visual effect to the Fort Myer Historic District should be acknowledged, rather than just saying no adverse effect. Second, on page 19 of the document that was circulated, the finding regarding the Confederate memorial itself was that the undertaking could potentially result in adverse effects to the Confederate memorial. And in our view, the likelihood of adverse effects, if it is removed, is certain. And so we think that the finding should be framed as a definite adverse effect rather than a potential adverse effect. And then on page 20 of the document that was submitted, there's a phrase that says that the undertaking should result in adverse effects on the Arlington National Cemetery Historic District. And in our view, that wording suggests that the adverse effects are desired by the agency, that they should result in adverse effects. And we recommend changing that wording to reflect something like it's likely to result in adverse effects, or it may result in adverse effects.
Ma'am,
Anyway,
your time.
I'm done
Didn't mean
with
to
those
cut you off.
comments. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for your comment. New Jersey Flaggers, Vincent Balducci. New Jersey Flaggers, Vincent Balducci. Organization of American Historians, Beth English.
We concur.
Okay, thank you. And next slide, please. Preservation Virginia, Elizabeth Castelny.
We pass for right now.
Thank you. Relative of Moses Ezekiel, Mr. Paul Ezekiel.
Hi, yes, thank you. As far as my family that I represent, this whole project is brand new to us. No one informed us. We've only heard about this through somebody ranting negative things about the Ezekiel family on Twitter. So I will stand for with my family in saying that anything done to this memorial or in any way is absolutely going to be a desecration on the grave of our ancestor and a very bad sore spot on the Arlington National Cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Save Southern Heritage, James Schillinglau.
Yeah, this is James Shillinglaw. I Save Southern Heritage. I say his name retired. I do not concur because last time we had this meeting, I brought up the psychological assessment effects of removing this monument on the descendants of the Confederate soldiers. Nobody's kind of really talked about that, like the outcome of the psychological effects. And I'll concur with Karen Bennett of Defend Arlington. I think she brought up some very good issues that haven't been addressed. And I agree with the Lieutenant Colonel that was on here. I do feel like this is kind of ramrod. It was supposed to be done by the end of the year, and we're here in middle October. This whole process should have been started sooner if you're serious about moving it. And we need more of an input from the community. And I would like to know if it is moved, if it's going to be where it's going to be stored. And I'd rather see it put back up in another location other than stored, because monuments that have been stored have never come back out of storage or have lost pieces. I'm just worried about the damage to the statue. If it does go into storage, I'd rather see it put up somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Save their honor, David Dilley. And you may be on mute. I'll say it again. Save their honor, David Dilley.
Excuse me, this is Karen Bennett. David Dilley's been kicked off the call and he's waiting in the waiting room. He does wish to speak. I typed that into the chat room a couple times. It hasn't been addressed yet. So possibly you circle back to him if someone needs to let him in, please.
Thank you for
Sure.
Notifying us of that. So we'll take care of that right away. And I will go ahead and just give that process a chance to kind of work its way through. So I'm going to move on to Society for the Preservation of Jewish Civil War History, Linnell Siegel, and then we can circle back to David Dilley. So Linnell Siegel, over to you.
You know, I just don't know how to digest this information you presented verbally. It's unfathomable that you would ask for sincere responses to verbal conclusions about what you do or don't believe are effects. This is an insincere process. And last time I brought up the concern about the cultural impacts and the anti-Semitism. And since then, hello, Israel's in a huge war because of anti-Semitism. Is the U.S. Army going to become the army of anti-Semitism army? I mean, you've got to stop this. You've got to find a way to stop this. This is foolishness.
Thank you for your comment. I'm going to circle back to Save Their Honor. David Dilley, are you with us now?
I am. Right as you were beginning to address the question, I was booted from the call. So could you restate the question for me? Thank you.
Sure. So we're looking at this point on getting comments on the assessment of effects. And if people on the phone, if you concur, you can state concurrence. You also have the ability to state that you wish to pass if you do not have a comment at this time, or if you do have a comment related to adverse effects. This is your time to do so, Mr. Dilley. And you have 1 minute to provide your comment.
Yeah, I'll simply state that I have numerous family members buried at the cemetery, and I also have ancestors who fought on the side of the Confederacy, and I do not concur with the assessment of effects as given here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Sons of Confederate Veterans, SCV, National Representative S. Braxton Puryear.
This is Scott Braxton Puryear. I'm the national representative for the National SCV. I also represent the plaintiffs in Hudson et al. Versus the United States, the Department of Defense et al., which opposes the removal of the reconciliation monument. We object to the process being employed. Waiving those objections, we will state that we do not concur with the process. The only correct course of action under the NEPA is to preserve our cultural resources in place. The history of this memorial, where it stands and what it represents, cannot be replicated at any other location because there is no other location that carries the same sacred significance as Arlington National Cemetery. This monument is in the Confederate section of Arlington National Cemetery, and as stated, it was erected to memorialize post-war reconciliation and the efforts to move it from its current location are contrary to the law, and they're contrary to the best interests of the future of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. SCV, Friends of Judah P. Benjamin, Camp 2210, David McAllister.
Hello, am I on?
You sure are, sir.
We believe that this has any movement or removal of this memorial has a profound adverse effect on Arlington National Cemetery. The viewscape is disturbed from the Spanish-American War direction. It disrupts the physical plan and cultural messages, and especially the history of reconciliation, which caused the 500 graves in Section 16 to be placed there ab initio to start with. And it is also, we consider it a direct anti-Semitic move. Will Jewish sculptures be removed? Next comes Jewish graves, including Moses Ezekiel's himself.
Thank you for your comment. And Mr. McAllister, I'm not sure if it's possible if you can turn off your camera, please. If you are done. Thank you, sir.
I will hit stop video. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Next group up is the SCV, Maryland Division, Terry Klima. And Mr. Klima, I know there was a comment already in the chat box, so I'm not sure if you wish to make an oral comment or statement, so I'll say your name one more time. SCV, Maryland Division, Terry Klima. Okay. SCV, Virginia Division, Robert Floyd. Again, SCV, Virginia Division, Robert Floyd. Of Union Veterans of the Civil War, Brian Pearson. And Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War, Brian Pearson. Robert Floyd is that, okay. All right. I will continue down this list. Southern Legal Resource Center, Kirk D. Lyons.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sir.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to underscore the comments of Karen Bennett of Defend Arlington. We concur completely, and we do not concur with in this vote with the assessment of effects. There are so many things that have been left out, starting with the scope is too narrow. I note that you'll say there are no remains under the memorial, but there is a time capsule that has not been addressed. That time capsule deserves specific consideration as historic artifacts that were placed there in 1914. The monument itself is the headstone for Moses Ezekiel. Any way you want to look at it, that is his headstone. And if he were alive today, he would be appalled at what is being done for his masterpiece. It has an international scope because he was the first internationally acclaimed Jewish American sculptor, and that should be remembered. If you move the monument, you will damage it. There's no discussion there.
Sir, your time has expired. Thank you for your comment. Southern Carolina State Historic Preservation Officer, John Sylvester.
Pass.
Thank you. The Virginia Council, Anne McLean.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I do not concur with the AP assessment, and I do concur with many of the things that were said before, especially by Karen Bennett. This monument is unmitigatable. There are definite adverse effects to it if it's moved in any way, shape, or form. It is a grave of Moses Ezekiel, foremost artist. And also, have you thought about how this appears to the entire National Cemetery with Memorial Bridge, connecting the Lincoln Memorial to the state of Virginia, to the meaning of reconciliation that is just woven throughout with the Spanish-American mast of the USS Maine in a circular vertical situation. This is a circular vertical piece. So the evolution of the entire Arlington National Cemetery is encapsulated in this beautiful piece of bronze, and it should be back on the tour, on the trolley tour, as a very important factor in the evolution of this memorial park that we are all so proud of.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Texas State Historic Preservation Officer, Justin Cockritz. And I'm not sure if I heard you come off of mute, so I'll state again. Texas State Historic Preservation Officer, Justin Cockritz. Are you there?
Hi, Justin here. We pass.
United Daughters of the Confederacy, Ginny Wadowski.
Hi. At this time, we do not concur with the statement. In December 14, 1898, McKinley gave his famous speech about sectional lines are no longer mar the map of the United States. If we go forward with this, we are drawing the lines once again, and we're setting up a division that should not be occurring at this time. This monument was to bring peace and reconciliation. Woodrow Wilson accepted this from the Daughters of the Confederacy in 1914, and he said, "The peace to unite." The monument was called the Reconciliation Monument. By doing this and removing it, we are harming that monument, and there will be adverse effects to it, as you cannot take it down and store it and then put it back up. The Arlington National Cemetery is a place of significance. This monument is significant and it should not be removed. We ask that you listen to all the voices that have been speaking out. Every meeting we have come to the table, and it's been overwhelming that we are all in agreement that this monument should stay as to where it is.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. U.S. Army Center for Military History, Charles Bowery. Again, U.S. Army Center for Military History, Charles Bowery. Veterans Defending Arlington, Lieutenant Colonel John Coffendaffer.
Check. Comm check, please.
You're there, sir. I can hear you.
Thank you. Veterans Defending Arlington non-concur, but would concur with Karen Bennett and Lieutenant Colonel Ed Kennedy. 21 years, active duty, 14 countries, 4 wars, 2 major offensives as combat air rescue pilot. I got to say, I was born at night, but not last night. This is a Marxist exercise in providing a voice and a vote on something that's already decided. A rhetorical question needs to be asked out there. Now that the statues are down, the bases are renamed, streets have been renamed, and quotes have been ground off of granite memorials, tell me, how have any lives been improved? This continued doublespeak narratives of Arlington tells our nation's history, but yet we're falling in line with a woke Marxist cancel culture civil and government minority that is hell-bent in erasing our nation's history. In short, this is nothing more than an exercise in Southern heritage, history, and cultural genocide. It's as if the Marxist playbook is directly out of Orwell's 1984, a study in totalitarianism. We look at the cause and effect. What's going on with military enlistments right now? Yeah, they're down. And you'd think with all this going on.
Time has I'm sorry, sir, your time has expired. Thank you again for your comment. Virginia Military Institute, Colonel Keith Gibson. Again, Virginia Military Institute, Colonel Keith Gibson. Virginia Department of Historic, sir? Is this Colonel Gibson?
Keith Gibson. Yes, we pass.
Thank you, sir. Virginia Department of Historic Resources, Roger Kirchin.
We'll pass for now, but appreciate the opportunity to listen to the comments and look forward to more discussion and response from the Army. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, ACHP, Chris Kopel.
Hi, yeah, this is Chris Keppel. We concur. However, we do want to ask you to also consider some of the comments made by our colleagues at the National Trust.
Thank you for your comment. I received a note here that consulting party that wasn't on the line earlier or available is now available. So I'm going to call them New Jersey Flaggers. New Jersey Flaggers, are you now available to come off of mute?
Yes, ma'am. New Jersey Flaggers. So with this memorial, I wanted to say that I do not concur with the assessment made about this monument, and I do concur with Ms. Karen Bennett's statements as well as Dr. McLean's statement. This is a reconciliation memorial. There is no other place that this memorial can go without ruining the historical significance of it. Everything at Arlington is symbolic in the spirit of reconciliation, honoring our proud American history and military history. These men and even women were veterans that fought in the war between the states. My ancestor, Fighting Joe Wheeler, is buried in Arlington. I worry daily that I can wake up one day and see on the news that they want to dig his grave up. He wore proudly both the gray and the blue. He believed in reconciliation. This monument not only honors his service to both North and South, but it honors all American veterans. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. And before I have you go on to mute, sir, can you just state your name as a spokesperson for New Jersey Flaggers?
Yes, ma'am. Vincent Balducci, president of New Jersey Flaggers.
Thank you. All right, Caitlin, I think that takes us through the list for the first round of comments by the consulting parties. Over to you.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. The Army has determined that there will be adverse effects on historic properties. Due to the time constraints on the completion of this undertaking, ANMC has also determined that a programmatic agreement is the best course of action to move forward with the resolution of effects. A programmatic agreement allows an agency and the entitled consulting parties to establish a streamlined process for handling Section 106 requirements for the undertaking. A programmatic agreement will set procedures for consultation, review, and compliance with Section 106. We would like to have a discussion here and get your input on possible mitigation measures to resolve adverse effects from the removal, disassembly, and storage. On this slide, you see a few possible mitigation measures such as documentation and interpretation. We are proposing various levels of documentation of the memorial prior to disassembly, such as the Historic American Buildings Survey, HABS documentation. This level of documentation is comprehensive and is done by professionals qualified by the Secretary of the Interior's standards for historic preservation. It would include a thorough history as well as physical documentation using photogrammetry. ANMC also proposes conducting condition assessments throughout the process, including before, during, and after disassembly. This would be done with photographic and narrative documentation of the statue, would record areas that have sustained weathering, loss of coatings, oxidation, etc. Additional documentation will be undertaken during and after the disassembly, during and after transportation, and of the storage location with the crates in situ. During disassembly activities, ANMC proposes to document the disassembly process. This comprehensive documentation will contribute to the preservation of the memorial and will serve as a historical record of the activities. This may include the creation of measured drawings, such as elevations, plans, architectural details, and construction elements, history, a step-by-step narrative of the disassembly process, photography, and videography to produce a comprehensive interdisciplinary record of the structure as it currently exists within the Section 16 in the ANC landscape. Related to the disassembling and storage, ANMC would include language in the programmatic agreement that would stipulate a high set of standards for disassembling and storage to minimize potential damage to the memorial's bronze elements. This would cover the inventory during disassembly, cleaning and storage methods, and annual inspections. ANMC is exploring various options also for interpretation. Could include web pages. It could include interpretation in the form of a story map. It could include interpretation on site. ANMC proposes continuing to develop interpretation at ANC of the Confederate Memorial portrayed on its granite base, using various interpretive panels so that visitors could still perceive what the memorial would have looked like before it was removed. ANMC proposes that interpretive panels should be one of the possible many mitigations for the removal. ANMC would include language in the programmatic agreement to set procedures for future consultation with the State Historic Preservation Officer and other consulting parties regarding the final placement and reassembly of the Confederate Memorial until a resolution has been met. The ANC, State Historic Preservation Office, and other consulting parties will develop and execute a Memorandum of Agreement, MOA, regarding the disposition and potential reassembly of the Confederate Memorial. This MOA will provide stipulations regarding the potential continued storage, transfer from the storage facility to the final disposition site, the reassembly, and any potential interpretation at that location. At this time, we ask for your comments on potential mitigation measures. Again, I would suggest referring to your handouts, which were provided ahead of the meeting. I will again turn this portion of the meeting back over to Erica. Erica?
Thank you, Caitlin. We will again be calling on each of the consulting parties. Please follow the process shown on this described, on the slide as described earlier in the presentation. Once again, all attendees should keep their microphone and camera off until they are called on to speak. All parties will have the same amount of time to speak. Each speaker will have 2 minutes for their response. Then we will need to move on to the next consulting party. When your name is called, once again, come off of mute and please turn on your camera. State your full name and organization, and then provide your response to the question or state pass. You will have 2 minutes to provide your response for this round. Once you have finished or your 2 minutes have expired, you will be placed back on mute. You can also choose to write your response in the chat box rather than providing an oral comment. Please provide your comments regarding potential mitigation measures. Please do not limit yourself to ones listed earlier. We are interested in all ideas to ensure we explore a full range of potential mitigations. If you do not wish to speak, please respond with either verbally stating pass or typing pass in the chat box when called upon. At this time, I will start with the roll call. Arkansas State Historic Preservation Office, Scott Kaufman.
Yes, this is Scott Kaufman. I'm the SHPO for Arkansas and director of the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program, and I'm going to pass right now.
Thank you. Arlington Historical Society, Mark Bendo.
Yes, this is Dr. Mark Bembo, the museum director for Arlington Historical Society, and I pass at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. American Historical Association, Sarah Weichsel.
Hey, Sarah Weichsel, Director of Research and Publications at the AHA. Regarding the disassembly documentation, we would urge that this documentation be very robust and as outlined by Caitlin earlier, to include all of the suggested mitigation methods.
Thank you for your comment. Thank you. American Institute for Conservation, AIC, Caitlin Lee.
Hi, this is Caitlin Lee. I wanted to add a comment that we have created a position statement on contested and Confederate monuments. And while these guidelines are likely very well aware of in your organization, wanted to flag that as a potential document to be consulted during this mitigation process and to be used throughout. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. American Battlefield Trust, Jim Campy. Again, American Battlefield Trust, Jim Campy. Advisory Council on Arlington National Cemetery, Thomas Chet Edwards. Okay, I just saw a note in the chat box that on behalf of Jim Campy that the Battlefield Trust was going to pass. I'll call on the Advisory Council of Arlington National Cemetery once more, Thomas Chet Edwards. Okay. Buffalo Soldiers, Florida, Timothy Campaign.
Timothy.
I'm sorry, sir.
Buffalo Soldiers, Florida. I cannot. Yes.
You are not coming through clearly, so I'm going to have you restart your statement. Once again, is this Timothy Campaign from Buffalo Soldiers, Florida? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
And
you're coming in clear. You're coming clear now. Go ahead.
okay, I cannot concur with the APE or the adverse effects or mitigation measures at this time. I'd like to see it all put in a document, and I don't feel I have enough information at this point. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. Ernest Blevins.
Ernest Blevins, historic preservationist. Where are we not considering the other options such as avoidance and minimization and just jumping to the mitigation part? It doesn't seem like we're doing things in the correct order. We obviously minimization is the worst we could do or should do, and that's just like adding signs or something. But avoidance is the best thing to do and just leave it as it is. That would avoid all adverse effects.
Thank you for your comment. Charleston Athenaeum Press, Gene Kaiser, Jr.
Yes, thank you. You cannot mitigate the destruction of a world-class memorial surrounded by 500 graves that are part of the memorial. You cannot mitigate illegally removing the grave marker of Moses Ezekiel and the 3 others buried with him at the base of his monument. You cannot mitigate the destruction of the reputation of Arlington National Cemetery itself, which becomes a desecrator of the graves of 500 war dead. The Naming Commission's report on the Confederate Memorial is a historical fraud because for political reasons, it left out the primary history of the Confederate Memorial, which is the reconciliation of the United States of America after a war in which 750,000 died and over 1 million remained. The Confederate Memorial was not in the Naming Commission's remit. Everybody at Arlington National Cemetery should appeal to Secretary Austin to leave the Confederate Memorial right where it is forever. If you don't, you will be violating your own oaths to make sure that ANC is always our most sacred burial ground and place that all Americans think of for love, patriotism, and inspiration. Woke politics does not belong in Arlington National Cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Commission of Fine Arts, CFA, Carlton Hart.
I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Defend Arlington, Karen Bennett. And you may be on mute. Defend Arlington, Karen Bennett.
Here I am. Yeah, we do not have comments on potential mitigation measures other than to ask you a question. How are the comments, all of the comments from consulting parties that you heard today being factored into what looks like a predetermined mitigation proposal? This needs to be put in a document that we can review and comment on. To put this information up on a slide for the first time ever and ask us to comment it on is not process. It's not a public comment process. And I would just urge you, this is arbitrary, and I would urge you to take a step back and conduct this in a meaningful way. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you for your comment. Miss Judith Ezekiel,
Yeah,
relative
Dr.
of Moses Ezekiel.
Yeah, Dr. Judith Ezekiel.
Sorry, ma'am.
First, I would like to say, and this is a point of order, that after the last meeting, I received harassing messages from 3 different people who managed to access my private Facebook page. Second point is that Moses Ezekiel has no living descendants. So when Mr. Paul Ezekiel identified his family as descendants, he should say relatives, not descendants. Third, even though you are not discussing removing Moses Ezekiel's grave, it has already been moved once, by the way. Anyway, I can only repeat what I said last time as representative of 42 relatives, Jews from 5 lines of descent, and also as a PhD historian of over 40 years, that this monument represents a revisionist, racist, Jim Crow view of history to rehabilitate the Confederacy, and is in no way an attempt to reconcile the formerly enslaved people with their nation. It's particularly egregious for not only African-American visitors, but for all freedom-loving people. As far as ways to document the process of removing the part of the statue, it's important to demonstrate the reasons why it is being removed rather than to just glorify it. So for instance, it should be documented how it contributed to the myth of the Black Confederate soldier, as shown in multiple scholarly studies, including the book by Kevin Levin recently. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Okay, our next commenter, Florida State Historic Preservation Office, Alyssa Latan. Again, Florida State Historic Preservation Office, Alyssa Latan. Fort Brooke Commissioner, Carlo Spicola. Fort Brooke Commissioner, Carlo Spicola. Guardians of American History, Barney Bishop. Guardians of American History, Barney Bishop. If you need to, you can come off of mute. I'd like to make a statement or state pass. Heritage Protection of North Alabama, Edwin Kennedy.
Hi, this is Lieutenant Colonel Ed Kennedy, Heritage Protection of North Alabama. There is no mitigation to the removal of this memorial. The adverse effects include the attack on Southern culture and the recruiting in the U.S. military, 45% of which is Southern. Many of these people are offended at what's going on with this woke policy, and that's affecting our recruiting. Additionally, of the $62.5 million that were allocated for the renaming commission's projects, they have more than doubled what was originally estimated, while we have thousands of soldiers reported in substandard barracks and on food stamps. The multiple scholar studies done on Black Confederates show that these men are also soldiers honored by this memorial. The work by a good friend of mine who is Black, Al Arnold, can be found easily online. And I have dozens of friends who are Black who are descendants of Confederates represented by this memorial. The destruction of it is an assault on their ancestors' memories as well. I have 2 Alabama Confederate ancestors buried in Virginia in unknown graves. This memorial stands as a memorial to their deaths and sacrifice. 29 years in uniform teaching graduate history as a retiree at the Army Staff College, I can assure you that many of our graduate students have only a basic knowledge of history, yet they're making decisions such as this. We do not concur with anything that's going on with this at this time because it's not done properly. This is being ramrodded through. There are no mitigations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Excuse me. Jewish War Veterans of the USA, Ken Greenberg. Again, Jewish War Veterans of the USA, Ken Greenberg. Kentucky State Historic Preservation Office, Craig Potts.
On behalf of Craig, we'll pass.
Thank you. Louisiana State Historic Preservation Office, Nicole Hobson Morris.
On behalf of Nicole, we pass.
Thank you. I don't know, I'm having a hard time with this word today. Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, Clark Mercer. Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, Clark Mercer. And again, while I have your the mic here, once again, we're looking here for comments regarding the potential mitigation measures. And once again, do not feel like you need to limit yourself to the ones that were listed earlier. Okay, Missouri State Historic Preservation Office, Jeffrey Alvey.
Yes, Jeffrey, we passed.
Thank you. National Capital Planning Commission, NCPC, Lee Webb.
Pass, please.
Thank you. National Park Service, George Washington Memorial Parkway, Megan Bailey. National Park Service, George Washington Memorial Parkway, Megan Bailey. National Trust for Historic Preservation, Robert Nywig.
This is Elizabeth Merritt speaking on behalf of the National Trust. If the adverse effects cannot be avoided since removal has been ordered, the mitigation should be robust. It should not be limited to documentation. It should include relocation of the statue to a place where the public can access and visit it. And mitigation should also include historical interpretation that is robust and widely accessible. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And just to confirm, once again, I know you were speaking on behalf of Mr. Newig. Can you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Elizabeth Merritt, and I'm Deputy General Counsel at the National Trust for Historic Preservation.
Thank you. New Jersey Flaggers, Vincent Balducci.
Yes, ma'am, Vincent Balducci, and I do not concur with this. This whole process is completely unmitigatable, as this is a grave. That's what a memorial is. It's a gravestone that honors all veterans, even the veterans that don't have a grave. And this was never mandated by Congress. And the other thing that I just want to add to this too, with this being a memorial, what this will set a dangerous precedence for any memorial in a cemetery that somebody wakes up and says, oh, that's offensive, let's tear it down. That insults a whole bunch of veterans. Me, myself, I'm proud of my Southern heritage. I'm proud of being Afro-Puerto Rican, and a bit of a history lesson. When I've read some of these news articles on this memorial and all that, it is insulting when people think that this memorial is insulting to us minorities. As a proud Puerto Rican, I love this memorial. I love our history. It's a rich history. And we had a lot of multicultural individuals in the Confederate Army. It was one of the first integrated armies where the Union armies were segregated. And I think that there needs to be a full exploration into the true history of America before any decision can be reached when it comes to thinking about desecrating a memorial, a grave. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Organization of American Historians, Beth English.
Hi, this is Beth English, the Executive Director of Organization of American Historians. OAH would simply, in addition to other comments that have been made, like to reiterate the need to follow established best practices of historic preservation as this process takes place.
Thank you for your comment. Preservation Virginia, Elizabeth Castelny.
Preservation Virginia will pass for right now.
Thank you. Relative of Moses Ezekiel, Mr. Paul Ezekiel.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Great.
I can, sir.
Yes, my name is Paul Ezekiel, and I represent a large part of the Ezekiel family. And on behalf of my side of the family, I would like to thank and honor all of those who are on the line right now who have served and are fighting for this memorial. It's hard for me to speak because it is very emotional for me and my family. My father is 94 years old, a Korean War veteran, 2 Purple Hearts. I have 2 brothers who served, one in Vietnam and one just retired from the Coast Guard after a full career. I am an artist and a musician and have been independently so for 20 years. All of us have been deeply inspired by our relative. And one thing I'd like to end with is I've never met this Judith person at any family reunion, but she's welcome to the next one in Ketchimal, Idaho, and she can bring her list of family members she says she's got that agree with this, because I don't know it. I have not seen a list, and we've been asking for one. And I feel attacked, and I'm really surprised, and this is deeply painful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Guardians, excuse me, we're on to Save Southern Heritage. James Shillinglaw.
Yeah, this is James Shillinglaw. Sorry for my voice. I've been fighting the cold here lately. But I do not concur with the APE or the effects. You cannot migrate the loss of Arlington, Virginia, Washington, or to America by what you're doing to this monument. And I do want to say that Judith Ezekiel should be removed from this proceedings because she has made her feelings known that she's here for personal and political views. This monument being moved or stayed or whatever be dealt with should not be a political football. It shouldn't be done with because she has a political view or some interpretation she has. Whether you like the Confederacy, you don't like the Confederacy, has nothing to do with these proceedings. We're talking about a monument. We're talking about American veterans, American Jewish veterans. We're talking about Florida veterans, which Florida is talking about getting involved legally with these proceedings too, just to give you a heads up. But I just, wish we could go about this a different way. I'm just really tongue-tied because I'm a 3-time Iraq War veteran and I'm very upset about what's going on too. If we have a monument put up, then somebody comes on and say the war was over old and want to take it down. It's just garbage. So I'm sorry for being upset. I'm trying to be middle of the road and stay positive. But thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment, sir. Save Their Honor, David Dilley. And I know, David, you had a comment, or excuse me, in the chat, but I just wanted to see if there's something you wanted to voice orally as well.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, so the Army was directed to remove the statue per the naming commission, but they were also ordered to follow Section 106. And Section 106 processes includes the opportunity and the possibility of doing avoidance. And so if the Army has declared that avoidance is not possible, then that would not be in congruence with the potential mitigations that are really available under the Section 106 process. So that's kind of that's not really a valid argument. Avoidance is on the table, and we can report back to the Army that the Section 106 process was followed, and that the public feedback was received, and that it was overwhelmingly against removing it, and that the adverse effects cannot be mitigated, and then let them know that, and that would be the fulfillment of the process, and that is exactly what should happen here. All of the comments, that 99% or more, have all been against taking it down. The SHPOs have not had official commentary, but from the public itself, they've all said that, and that is our organizational perspective, is that this we do not concur with the mitigation. We believe that this should be sent back to the Army with the review of 106, stating that avoidance is the only acceptable mitigation outcome, and that the public response in Section 106 basically undermined their directive. So that's what needs to go back. That's the only way to approach it. And as far as the actual memorial site goes, all of the graves around the memorial are part of that area. And so to take down the memorial itself is to desecrate that area, because it is designed around that statue, and therefore removing it completely undoes what that area stands for, and it does desecrate those graves, which was specifically supposed to be avoided by law, which is also stated in that law. So there is no way to possibly mitigate this, so we do not concur. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Society for the Preservation of Jewish Civil War History, Linnell Seal.
Yes, I really should have taken debate in college to participate in this meeting, because, you're asking us to, you throw up this information and just expect us to respond to it. I don't know how to do that. But I have a few thoughts that I would like to just kick off. First of all, that last man who talked, I think that was about the most cogent thing I've heard today, and I'd like to underscore his comments. But I have read the NDAA, the 2021 NDAA, and the opening comments that this was required or mandated or must be done. I dispute that. And so this is a grave marker. This is a cemetery memorial. It marks this plot. It marks those graves there. It marks Ezekiel's grave. You couldn't be closer to it. This is anti-Semitic. You're doing this for political reasons. You're outside of the remit. It's just wrong. It's illegal. It's immoral. This memorial has the Hebrew Bible verse from Isaiah on it. This quote, granite elements that you talk about so euphemistically. This is a memorial. It's a grave marker. You people really should be ashamed of yourself, and I'm sure you're going to delete me for that comment. But shame on this process. This is a Jewish man's grave. This is a religious memorial. This is not a Confederate statue. This is not a Confederate statue. This is a memorial. This marks graves. This is in a cemetery. If America lets this come down, if you participate in it, there's nothing off limits. Nothing is sacred. Nothing is holy. Nothing is off the list.
Your time has expired. Thank you very much for your comment. Sons of Confederate Veterans, SCV, National Representative S. Braxton Puryear.
I'm Scott Braxton Puryear, and I represent the National Sons Confederate Veterans. I also represent the plaintiffs in the Hudson versus Department of Defense lawsuit. We object to the processes being employed. Without waiving our objections, we do not concur with this process. There is no way to mitigate the removal of this memorial. This is absolutely disastrous. This is desecration of a grave site 500 graves are arranged around this, the Reconciliation Memorial. The facility has already placed contextualization information next to the Reconciliation Memorial. We do not agree with the contextualization, but that is sufficient to mitigate any perceived harm to any members of the public. Nothing can adequately mitigate the removal of this memorial because no other location in the United States possesses the equivalent significance of Arlington National Cemetery. Arlington National Cemetery is the nation's most sacred shrine and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places as an outdoor military museum. The public perception of the Arlington National Cemetery will forever be irreparably altered by this proposed action. And if this memorial is removed from its location at Arlington National Cemetery, posterity will be deprived of the opportunity for sincere study and civil discourse, the way President William McKinley, the 56th Congress, and the artists intended. Thank you.
For your comment. SCV Friends of Judah P. Benjamin Camp 2210, David McAllister.
Hello, I assume I'm on here. On behalf of the Friends of Judah P. Benjamin, we say no mitigation is possible. This memorial was envisioned by President McKinley. It was planned and designed and constructed and dedicated by President Wilson specifically for this place and no other. It is customized, if you will, for Section 16 in the center of Jackson Circle. And you are gutting the whole plan if there's any movement. A succession of presidents for over a century have honored veterans by placing wreaths at this spot on this memorial. How do you mitigate the message of Confederophobia and anti-Semitism and anti-Christian values regarding honoring the dead? And mitigate the barbaric artistic iconoclasm with the removal of this public artifact? How do you mitigate the cultural message to the world of the purposeful desecration of veterans' graves and their grave markers and the whole of Arlington National Cemetery, and deliberately repudiate the American ideal of reconciliation after conflict? How can we ever expect or ask Israel and Gaza to get along when we do this? The motto of Arlington, honor, remember, explore, will become dishonor, forget, and deplore. No mitigation is possible.
Thank you for your comment. SCV Maryland Division, Terry Klima, and I know there was some notes or some comments in the chat, but once again, I'm not sure if there's something you want to provide orally. So Terry Klima.
No comments. Just chat, please.
Okay, thank you. Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War, Brian Pearson. Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War, Brian Pearson. Southern Legal Resource Center. Oh, sorry, Mr. Pearson. Nope. Southern Legal Resource Center, Kirk D. Lyons.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Is this Mr. Lyons?
Okay, yes. We do not concur. Okay, the video has been stopped. Okay. We do not concur. We do wish to state, though, that we do 100% concur with the comments of Karen Bennett of Defend Arlington. She is spot on. That should be listened to again. And I would say also that the letter from Defend Arlington dated October 16th to Ms. Renee Yates should be read very carefully regarding this process or lack of process. But as far as what is mitigatable, none of this can be mitigated. How do you mitigate anti-Semitism? How do you do that? How do you mitigate a loss of international reputation when you destroy and desecrate a memorial. How do you mitigate desecrating Moses Ezekiel's headstone, which is what this is? How do you do that? I don't think any of this is mitigatable, especially if you demolish it or remove it, you will damage it. You cannot mitigate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Southern Carolina State Historic Preservation Office, Anne McLean.
Thank you. I completely agree this is not mitigatable. I agree with Braxton Puryear's comments, David McAllister's, Kirk Lyons just now. There is no way to mitigate the damage that would happen here. Could you take the St. Louis Gateway Arch away from the river in Missouri and have it be the same thing? It would never work. You cannot fix it or mitigate. The human beings that represent the 32 human beings here really tell the story of the cemetery. Their human remains under the headstones. This is about people, and this monument is the only one that demonstrates human beings in such a way. The urns, the palms, the scripture, this tells the story of America and people who fought. The only soldier artist in the whole cemetery created this and specified it to be his headstone. He's the only one to study art, to make it his career for sculpting in the American Renaissance, to have an international reputation. He's the only one to have Thomas Jefferson's nephew die in his arms at Newmarket. It is reprehensible, and I believe calls for court-martial or malpractice suits against anyone who is in an Arlington National Cemetery or the Park Service that agrees to take this down. You guys are, whoever is pushing this is really beyond the pale, and I totally believe this is unmitigatable and that this process is a kangaroo court if you do not listen to our comments and give them, as you say, every comment is important. No one is more important than anyone else. Well, the bulk of these, 99%, say leave this alone. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. McLean. And I just want to, for the record, state, I believe I stated the wrong organization. I believe Ms. Anne McLean, you're associated with the Virginia Council. Did I get that correct this time?
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Thank you. South Carolina State Historic Preservation Office, John Sylvester.
I'm going to pass at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Texas State Historic Preservation Office, Justin Cockritz.
It's the Texas Historical Commission, the Texas SHPO, and will pass at this time as well.
Okay, you're a little garbled, Mr. Cockritz, so I just want to confirm that you're saying that you will pass at this time. Is that correct?
Will pass.
Thank you. United Daughters of the Confederacy, Ginny Wadowski.
Hi, at this time, we do not measures. And I think the message needs to be sent back to Congress that there's an overwhelming agreement that this monument, the Reconciliation Monument, needs to stay where it is at. In 1906, the daughters were handed this assignment. They sought out and had Sir Moses Ezekiel come up with the designs. They complied with 4 presidents and the Arlington National Cemetery. They were given Section 106, and it was dedicated to Sir Ezekiel Moses for this memorial and for the 500 graves. At this time, if you're transferring this monument, you cannot move that monument without destroying that monument. It will never come down the way it went up. You cannot store that monument and it get back into one piece again. At this time, we believe, as the daughters who put that up, that it should stay put where it is at, and the story should be told that it was a reconciliation monument to bring peace and healing to this nation. There was a purpose for it being in that section. There is no other place that this could go to have that same importance or significance to bring healing and bring peace The story needs to be told. Our history is our history. It is American history, right or wrong. We cannot go and undo our history. We can only learn from our history, and we can only move forward as a nation. But when things like this occur, it sets us back years and years. Please take the message back to leave our monument where it belongs, a sign of peace and healing, and name it the Reconciliation Memorial, because that's what it was given as in 1914 to Woodrow Wilson. And I think the story needs to be told, what that monument stands for and what each section of that monument stands for. People are taking things out of context and the whole story is not being told. So please, we do not concur at this time, and we ask that you do not destroy this monument or move it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. U.S. Army Center for Military History, Charles Bowery. U.S. Army Center for Military History, Charles Bowery. Veterans Defending Arlington, Lieutenant Colonel John Coffendaffer.
Lieutenant Colonel Coffendaffer, check, please.
You're coming loud and clear, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. The only mitigation is to leave the Reconciliation Memorial in place via Section 106. No cause and effect study has been accomplished in regards to current military recruitment, which happens to be a very hot topic. I happen to serve with now he was the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, C.Q. Brown, and now he's the Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff. My question, so with the statues being torn down, the base names being changed, and the streets being renamed, and the quotes ground off of all the granite memorials, why haven't the minorities flooded en masse to the recruiting stations? I mean, everybody must be feeling good about this, right? Does anybody even know? And just the opposite effect, Southerners, gravely insulted by the naming commission's Southern history, heritage, and cultural genocide, have grossly decreased their enlistment levels. Imagine that. Imagine that. So why would the removal of the Reconciliation Memorial yield a different result? Can somebody answer that? Now, what is it that Albert Einstein said about repeating the same thing, the same experiment, over and over again, expecting a different result? That's all I got. Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you for your comment. Virginia Military Institute, Colonel Keith Gibson. Virginia Military Institute, Colonel Keith Gibson. Virginia Department of Historic Resources, Roger Kirchen.
Thank you. As we move beyond identification and effect determination, I think it's critical that we do consider steps to minimize that. And I think what will be key in that effort would be to have a robust plan for removal. I also do think that the presence of a cornerstone capsule, which aren't particularly or aren't specifically called time capsules, but the cornerstone boxes do need to be considered, and some decision made to either leave it in place and protect it, or to have it removed at this point. But I think that would go into a minimization plan, as well as a plan for disassembly and storage, or will all go into to elements to minimize the effect. So I don't want to skip that necessary element and that fine line distinction between effect and mitigation. But at this point, we look forward to reviewing whatever additional options for mitigation may come out, and perhaps some clarity on whether Caitlin had mentioned that there's a programmatic agreement that can be pursued, and then maybe a memorandum of agreement. Before we break up today, maybe some clarification on exactly how the Army intends to memorialize minimization and mitigation measures, and how that the PA and MOA might work together. So forgive me for not catching that the first go on. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. The Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, ACHP, I believe from the chat that Chris Copel may have had to depart the meeting, but I'm going to pause here for a moment just to see if he is still on or if there's a representative from ACHP. So once again, there is, I believe he did make a comment in the chat box before he had to log off. I've also been handing a note. There is another consulting party that has joined the meeting that would like to call forward, and that is Discovery Institute, Scott Powell. Discovery Institute, Scott Powell. Okay, next slide, please. All right, well, thank you everyone for your comments regarding the assessment of effects. Oh, Scott is there. Sorry. Go ahead, Scott, please. Mr. Scott Powell from Discovery Institute. Let's see. Did he call in and have issues? I'm starting to hear you, sir, but it's a little garbled. If you could speak a little further.
Can you hear me now?
Much better.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind starting off with an introduction of your organization and your name, please.
Yeah, the Discovery Institute is an institution that pursues the truth in a number of different areas, one of which is history. And I feel very strongly that this monument, the removal of this monument, has very serious consequences, particularly in the times in which we live. You know, it's unfathomable to me, really, that we are going back to relitigate what has already been solved. Admittedly, the Reconciliation Monument didn't necessarily bring closure to the racial strife that ensued after the Civil War with Reconstruction and so forth. But in the military, the military as an institution is probably the least racist institution in all of America. And but needless to say, we are a country of redemption. We believe in progress, and the civil rights movement of the 60s really brought about a final redemption, and the opportunities are open to all ethnic groups and races today. Why are we going back in time to open this wound? This is not the mark of good governance and good leadership. And so I do not concur and would be inclined to be part of legal action to stop this process. You know, over 100 people spoke out against it and only one favored removal, but we've heard nothing. And yet you've just said earlier that, you know, we're equally valued. Doesn't seem that way to me. And I'd rather concur with those that have said this is just a pro forma process, but it doesn't have any real substance because the outcome has already been determined, and the determination is to remove the monument, which is a disgrace, and it's illegal. And I think there will be legal repercussions. And I think the people that are involved with it will be named in that legal action, as they should be. So I thank you for giving me time.
Thank you for your comment. And I have been provided another organization, a consulting party here that is in the meeting. We have from the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, Region 3, Barbara Oakhorn. who's the NHPA Program Manager. And I'm not sure if Ms. O'Corn would like to make a comment at this time, or
Hi, no, I just joined. This is my first time joining one of these, so I just got connected.
okay. Nothing like being put on spot, huh? So thank you very much for joining. And we'll circle back. We have one more round of opportunities for consulting parties to comment. So I'll be sure to make sure you're on that list, Ms. O'Corn, so that you have the opportunity if you wish to speak during the next round. Okay, all right. So moving on to the slide here, which talks about written comments. Those that were not able to attend today's meeting, but who still want to have their comments read, were requested to provide their comments ahead of the meeting. And we have reviewed the list of submitted comments and verbal comments and determined that. And I'm going to pause here for a moment to see if Ms. Caitlin Smith has any comments that need to be read at this time of parties that were not able to attend today.
Thank you. So we did receive a number of comments ahead of the meeting. Thank you all for your contributions. We had offered to read comments for parties that would not be in attendance, and it does appear that all parties that submitted written comments have had the opportunity to speak at today's meeting. So as a result, we will not be reading the written comments to make sure there is additional time for verbal comments today. But we did want to reiterate again that all consulting party comments submitted in writing before the meeting and during the comment period will be included as a full attachment to the meeting minutes. Well, comments provided related to this meeting will be provided attached to the meeting minutes. Comments provided by the public and all others will be added to the administrative record, and all these comments will be used as we continue through this process to develop our Section 106 determinations and eventually work on our mitigations. Over. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. If I could have you move to the next slide, please. So we appreciate everyone's comments on the important topic and would like to provide all consulting parties a second opportunity to respond here today. We'll go around the room, around the group one more time and call on all spokespersons again. If you wish to speak, you will have 1 minute to do so. Please follow the same procedures as set before. When called on, unmute yourself and turn on your camera. If you do not wish to speak, please respond with pass or type pass in the chat box when called upon. And once again, for the comments today, we're looking at information related to the adverse effects and the assessment effects, as well as mitigation measures. I will go ahead and start with the roll call once again. And this provides you once again with a 1 minute opportunity to provide any further comments on mitigation measures or adverse effects. Arkansas State Historic Preservation Officer, SHPO, Scott Kaufman.
I'm going to pass right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see, and I know some people are passing here in the chat box, so I'm going to try to keep up with that as we go through. I see Arlington Historical Society has passed as well. Mark Benbow. American Historical Association, Sarah Weichsel.
Yeah, I put this in the chat, but just to add to our previous comment, we'd like to see disassembly documentation accompanying the memorial as part of the historical record, and that the documentation as well as the memorial be preserved and remain accessible for researchers. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, we have American Institute for Conservation, AIC, Caitlin Lee. All right, looks like she will pass based on the chat. Okay, American Battlefield Trust, Jim Campy. Looks like they will pass as well. Advisory Council on Arlington National Cemetery, Thomas Chet Edwards. I'll just call one more time. Advisory Council on Arlington National Cemetery, Thomas Chet Edwards. Okay. Buffalo Soldiers, Florida, Timothy Campaign.
Yes, I'd just like to say that this reconciliation memorial was erected in an attempt to bring the North and the South back together again. And there have been many attempts over the years to do that. And the soldiers from the South and the North came together, their sons came together and fought in future battles together and respected each other. And I think removing this memorial is more of a separating people than bringing them together. And I can say that speaking on behalf of my ancestors, one of whom was wounded on the battlefield at Chancellorsville and paroled to die. They fought with honor, they fought for what they believed in, but they're glad that war was over and it was time to pull our country back together. And at this time, the United States of America needs us all to come together and not be separated. So I just have to say, leave that reconciliation memorial in its place and hold us together rather than separate us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. Ernest Blevins.
Ernest Blevins. Removing the monument is very divisive. I also believe that you can report back to Congress that following 106, that avoidance is a legitimate way to go through this. Tell them that, cannot be avoided. It was not exempted from 106 review, as sometimes they have exempted environmental laws for various projects. Therefore, they need to follow Section 106 and do avoidance to maintain the monument, maintain the reconciliation, maintain the artwork and the historic value of the resource. It would be an adverse effect for the monument and for the cemetery itself. So we need to preserve in place and report back to Congress that avoidance is the best way to go instead of jumping on to a platform that will lead, that is for leading towards a memorandum of agreement, which hasn't even been proposed yet, as I understand, but yet we're trying to figure out the mitigation so that a memorandum can just be quickly done and forced through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comment. Charleston Athenaeum Press, Gene Kaiser Jr.
Yes, thank you. President Warren G. Harding sent a message of condolence that was read at the funeral of Moses Ezekiel. Here are some of Harding's comments from the Evening Star, Washington, D.C., March 30, 1921. Ezekiel will be remembered as one who knew how to translate the glories of his own time and people into that language of art, which is common to all peoples and all times. He served his state in the conflict and accepted the verdict of the Civil War's arbitrament with all the fine generosity that has been characteristic of both the North and South. And the splendid product of his art that here testifies to our nation's reunion will stand from this day forth as guardian over his ashes. Every line and curve and expression carries the plea for a truly united nation that may be equal to the burdens of these exacting times. It speaks to us the ardent wish, the untiring purpose to help make our people one people, secure in independence, dedicated to freedom. Its long drawn shadows of earliest morn and latest evening will always fall on sacred soil. Ezekiel.
Sir, your time has expired.
Okay.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Commission of Fine Arts, CFA, Carlton Hart.
Hi, no comment at this time. I pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Defend Arlington, Karen Bennett. Mute, Defend Arlington, Karen Bennett. Just looking to see in the chat.
Here, sorry.
I would just say that the advisory council has advised that the agency should not predetermine outcomes. And this forecloses full and robust discussion of possible alternatives. And I think that's exactly what's been done here. The Army has predetermined mitigation and proposed a proposed mitigation plan and options prior to even considering the comments that you heard on the call today. This is not the way the process is set out to work. It's not consistent with the regulations. I would just say that it appears very arbitrarily done. I think that any decisions and final determinations that the Army would make that are inconsistent with the Section 106 regulations and the Act will be arbitrary and capricious. And I would just urge you to avoid that by conducting a meaningful and a consultation consistent with the requirements of the law. And that's not being done.
Ma'am, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay. See, I've lost my place here. Dr. Judith Ezekiel, relative of Moses Ezekiel. Okay, I believe she's no longer on the call, so I'll move forward. Florida State Historic Preservation Office, Alyssa Latan. Florida State Historic Preservation Office, Alyssa Latan. Fort Brooke Commissioner, Carlo Spicola. Fort Brooke Commissioner, Carlo Spicola. Guardians of American History, Barney Bishop. Gardens of American History, Barney Bishop. Heritage Protection of North Alabama, Edwin Kennedy.
This is Lieutenant Colonel Ed Kennedy. My closing comment is this last week we've watched the genesis of the destruction of our Confederate memorials by Black Lives Matter, a Marxist organization now aligned with Hamas. It tells you where this is going. In Military Officer Magazine in October's issue, it shows the Marines and Japanese holding a reconciliation memorial ceremony on Iwo Jima. If we can do it with the Japanese, why can't we do it with our own Americans? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Jewish War Veterans of the USA, Ken Greenberg. Jewish War Veterans of the USA, Ken Greenberg. Kentucky State Historic Preservation Office, Craig Potts.
On behalf of Craig, we'll pass.
Thank you. Louisiana State Historic Preservation Office, Nicole Hobson Morris.
On behalf of Nicole, we pass.
Thank you. Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, Clark Mercer. Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, Clark Mercer. Missouri State Historic Preservation Office, Jeffrey Alvey.
We pass.
I'm sorry, just to confirm, I think you said that you pass. Okay. National Capital Planning Commission, NCPC, Lee Webb. National Capital Planning Commission, NCPC, Lee Webb. National Park Service, George Washington Memorial Parkway, Megan Bailey. National Park Service, George Washington Memorial Parkway, Megan Bailey. Okay. National Trust for Historic Preservation, Robert Nywig, or excuse me, Newig.
This is Elizabeth Merritt on behalf of the National Trust. My understanding is that the issue being posed in this round of comments is essentially the same as the prior round. So we stand by our prior comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And yes, just to reiterate, this provides all consulting parties an additional 1 minute for any additional comments related to the adverse effects, for the assessment effects, or as well as for mitigation measures. Okay. New Jersey Flaggers, Vincent Balducci.
Yes, so to continue on, there is nothing that could, this is unmitigatable again. This is a memorial. This is a grave. This is outside of Section 106. And what's really heartbreaking is just what message are we sending to our veterans and to our Jewish community when we destroy a memorial that honors service, sacrifice, and was made by a very talented Jewish American. And I truly believe that everybody on this committee and just abroad has got to read The Life and Times of Moses Jacob Ezekiel by Peter Adams Nash. It covers direct quotes from Ezekiel. He sets the record straight on a lot of things. And we cannot, when this right here is an anti-Semitic issue. Destroying a memorial to a Jewish American veteran is not only anti-veteran, it's anti-American, and it is anti-Semitic to do that. And this is no better than what Hamas is doing to Israel. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Organization of American Historians, Beth English.
Hi, Beth English, Executive Director of Organization of American Historians. I also noted this in the chat, but just to reiterate that OEH supports the comments made by Sarah Weichsel on behalf of AHA related to making sure that historical documentation is created aligning with historical preservation best practices and that it remains open and accessible for future research. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Preservation Virginia, Elizabeth Castelny. Preservation Virginia, Elizabeth Castelny. Relative of Moses Ezekiel, Mr. Paul Ezekiel. And I'm not sure if you're on mute, but I'll ask again. Relative of Moses Ezekiel, Mr. Paul Ezekiel. Next slide, please. Save Southern Heritage, James Schillinglaw.
Yes, I'm here. This is James Schillinglaw with Save Southern Heritage. I was just I had a question. How can you consider migration when you haven't identified all the resources? And how can you consider continuing this when all the consulting parties don't agree with the APE? That's the comments I want to officially put into the records. And also I had a quick question about the minutes from the last meeting, and when can we get minutes from that meeting and this meeting? That's all.
Thank you. Save Their Honor, David Dilley.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you. Just want to say it is incorrect and untruthful to pretend as though the Army has no choice in this matter. I said that before, and it's still true. The law that Congress passed subjected all proposed changes to the appropriate legal processes, and this is one of those processes, and therefore the proposed change is subject to the process, and therefore a mitigation of avoidance is absolutely appropriate and possible. There's no point in maintaining this facade that the Army has to continue against all odds. It's not true. Those that hate the memorial, those that find it offensive, will not be satisfied with any other public relocation. So there's no sense in moving it to some other public place. It won't work. They'll have just as much complaints about it wherever it goes, and it will not work. The Army might ignore the law, and they might ignore the public outcry that we've heard here, and they might go ahead with this act of national cemetery desecration. But I would say that future generations will not look kindly on them for this, and future Congresses may reverse this decision. Sacred ground is immune from all political agendas in all civilized society. The Confederate memorial must stay unmarred and unmolested exactly where it stands. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And I'm just going to remind folks, if you can make sure your cameras are off unless you are speaking, that way we can focus on the speaker at hand. So thank you very much. All right. Let's see, Society for the Preservation of Jewish Civil War History, Linnell Siegel.
Thank you very much. You know, the time for this process is past. The time for this review was before Secretary of Defense Austin adopted the recommendations. Stop, look, and listen should have occurred before he decided to go and dig up a memorial and jeopardize graves and this grave marker at Arlington National Cemetery. The man who said dishonor, forget, deplore, he nailed it. This is a mockery of the entire historic preservation process. And shame on the SHPOs who are passing today. Shame on them. I wonder if the citizens of their states know that they are, by being silent, if they are endorsing this anti-Semitic army.
Thank you for your comment. Sons of Confederate Veterans, SCV, National Representative S. Braxton per year.
Sons Confederate Veterans National Organization and the Hudson plaintiffs in Hudson versus Department of Defense non-concur with the removal of the Reconciliation Memorial. With respect to the National Historic Preservation Act, we simply absolutely must preserve our cultural resources where they are. With respect to the National Environmental Protection Act, we cannot mitigate the adverse effects of removal of this memorial. This is the desecration of a grave site and Arlington National Cemetery. The Reconciliation Memorial is the grave marker for 500 Confederate graves. When you start tearing down statues, then you start burning books. Arlington National Cemetery is our most hallowed sacred shrine for military veterans. We would ask that Henry Edward Phillips memorandum dated 16 October 23 that has been submitted be included in the minutes for this meeting. It's intellectual dishonesty when you start with an end point and then you reason backwards, which is exactly what this process is doing. And it's objectionable, it's abhorrent to the intelligent people who are given our input with respect to this process. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your comment. SCV Friends of Judah P. Benjamin, Camp 2210, David McAllister.
Well, basically saying what I've said before, the potential proposed mitigation measures are inadequate. It's not possible to mitigate the physical, the psychological, the legal, and the cultural effects of any removal. You can't move it. You can't hide it. It already has context, and you can't try to revise history just to suit ephemeral woke sensibilities. Too many people know the truth. It was meant to be permanent. Leave it alone. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. SCV Maryland Division, Terry Klima. Again, SCV Maryland Division, Terry Klima. All right, I believe there is a comment in the chat here from you. Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War, Brian Pearson. Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War, Brian Pearson. All right. Southern Legal Resource Center, Kirk D. Lyons.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. We do not concur, but we do concur with the comments made by Ms. Karen Bennett of Defend Arlington and of Ms. Linnell Siegel of the Jewish Civil War Veterans Organization, and with Mr. Puryear of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. This is not mitigatable. The potential mitigation measures that you outlined are an insult and a desecration in and of themselves to Mr. Moses Ezekiel, who is buried at the foot of the memorial and is his headstone. And you are making a mockery of Arlington National Cemetery by even thinking about removing this most sacred memorial in a very sacred place in a sacred cemetery. You make a mockery of everything that Arlington National Cemetery should stand for. Don't touch it. You cannot mitigate this. Leave it alone.
Thank you for your comment. South Carolina State Historic Preservation Office, John Sylvester. Just making sure I didn't miss anything in the chat. One more time, South Carolina State Historic Preservation Office, John Sylvester. The Virginia Council, Anne McLean.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm sorry for that delay. Okay, great. Thank you for this time. I believe with so many of the other speakers that this is an unmitigatable piece of artwork and headstone, a grave marker. It's outside the remit of the Congressional Naming Commission. You need to avoid any action on this per the 106 review process. This isn't, to remove this would be an anti-Semitic, anti-humane act, and it is an integrated monument. There's no evidence that the African people represented are slaves, and it does show harmony of people working together, and it shows love and humanity. So the woke destruction, which is advised by certain academics as Edward Ayers, Lewis Nelson, Marlon Buckner, Melody Barnes, needs to be ignored and understood for what it is by anyone with any good sense. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Texas State Historic Preservation Office, Justin Cockritz.
Thank you.
Sorry, did you say pass? I think.
Yes, pass.
Okay, thank you. United Daughters of the Confederacy, Ginny Wadowski.
Yes, I would like to read some quotes from the speech from 1914 from Mrs. Daisy McLaurin Stevens, who was the president of the UDC that handed over the monument to President Wilson. As long as the government shall rest in your hands and hands like yours, we for sure that American institutions will not pass from the earth. And this monument will not only be a memorial of the past, but a symbol of the present and in the future. And President Woodrow Wilson came back to say, this task is this, ladies and gentlemen, the chapter in history of the United States is now closed, and I can bid you turn with me your faces to the future, quickened by bid in the memories of the past, but nothing to do with the contest of the past. Knowing as we have shed our blood upon opposite sides, we now face and admire one another. The generosity of our judgment was made up soon after the great struggle was over, and the men and women sat together again in Congress and united in all efforts of peace of the government. And our solemn duty is to see that each one of us in his own consciousness and in his own conduct is a replica of this great reunited people. It is our duty and our privilege to be like a country.
And your time has expired. Thank you for your comment. U.S. Army Center for Military History, Charles Bowery. U.S. Army Center for Military History, Charles Bowery. Veterans Defending Arlington, Lieutenant Colonel John Coffendaffer.
Colonel Coffendaffer, com check, please.
You're coming in loud and clear, sir.
Thank you. This woke Marxist naming commission train wreck is just the beginning of the end of our Judeo-Christian constitutional republic. Mark my word on that. but I'll let you know that failing our Southern ancestors is not an option. We'll never, ever give up. Be sure to put on your performance reports how you pandered to Marxism and are playing a part in dividing America over a memorial that reunited our broken nation. Your time.
Thank you for your comment. Virginia Military Institute, Colonel Keith Gibson. Virginia Military Institute, Colonel Keith Gibson.
This is Keith Gibson of VMI. We passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Virginia Department of Historic Resources, Roger Kirshen.
We don't have any additional comments this round. Thank you.
Thank you. I will call out Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, ACHP. I believe Chris Copel has dropped off, but I'm not sure if there's another representative that's taking his place. And then once again, I have the two additional consulting parties. Discovery Institute, Scott Powell. Discovery Institute, Scott Powell.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. I can't add any more than what has already been offered by so many distinguished and articulate participants. But I think we could all agree that reconciliation, that the e pluribus unum that makes up America are values that we want to uphold. And that is precisely what the purpose of this monument was. It was not thought of as a Confederate monument, but rather a monument of reunion, of reconciliation, that that we were one nation. And that was really real. You know, the inspiration of this was really the Spanish-American War, when the Southern boys really made the difference in winning that war in very, very quickly and decisively. So this is a great monument. And so if we're talking about mitigation and we acknowledge that the monument must remain, how about talking about constructive mitigation, like putting up appropriate placard sign that proclaim this as a reconciliation monument? It's not a Confederate monument. It is a reconciliation monument. And I think that would put this whole thing to rest.
Sir, your time has expired. Thank you for your comment. And once again, we have the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA Region 3, Barbara O'Corn. I'll just check in once more. EPA Region 3, Barbara O'Corn. Well, thank you everyone for your comments regarding the assessment of effects. At this time, I turn the meeting back over to Ms. Caitlin Smith to provide an update on the next steps in the Section 106 process.
Thank you. ANMC continues to consult with DHR on the next step in the process, or the current step, the assessment of effects to those historic properties. On October 3rd, 2023, ANMC submitted the revised Area of Potential Effects, the APE, and the agency's assessment of effects to the Virginia Department of Historic Resources and the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. ANMC awaits the DHR's determination. After the determination is received, ANMC will be holding meetings with the entitled and invited signatories to have further discussions regarding the resolution of potential adverse effects and begin the preparation of an agreement document between ANMC and the consulting parties. We will be taking your comments into consideration during the development of this agreement document. Please note that the public comment period for the assessment of effects is open through November 3rd. Please submit comments through the comment form available on our website or email us at the Commemorative Works email box. A reminder that for the purposes of Section 106, there are 3 types of consulting parties: entitled, invited signatories, and concurring consulting parties. It's important to know where you and your organization stands during the process in developing an agreement. Most of you will fall within the concurring consulting party status. As consulting parties, we are looking for you to share your views, review documentation to support consultation, offer ideas, and consider possible solutions for the outcome of this project. We will be taking your comments into consideration during the development of an agreement document. We appreciate your input and contributions to this consultation process. A reminder that all comments submitted will be added to the administrative record.
We appreciate your participation in today's consulting parties meeting. We will remain in contact with you through email and the ANC website, where we continue to provide information as it becomes available as we continue working through the Section 106 process. Please visit the project website to access additional information. And a reminder that the comment period for assessment of effects is open through November 3rd. Please submit comments through the comment form or email us at anc-commemorative-works@army.mil. All comments submitted will be added to the administrative record. Thank you for your time this afternoon.